There is something you have carried your entire life that no one ever gave you a name for. A weight that arrives without warning. A tiredness that does not come from your own body. A grief that belongs to someone else, yet settles in your chest as if it were yours. You have walked into a room and felt the invisible tension before a single word was spoken. You have sat next to a stranger on a train and suddenly felt an inexplicable sadness wash over you. A sadness you could not explain because your own morning had been perfectly fine. You have answered the phone and known before the first sentence that something was wrong. Not because of logic, not because of reason, because you felt it. Long before the words arrived, the feeling was already there. The world gave you many names for this. Too sensitive, too emotional, too much. They told you to develop thicker skin, to stop taking everything so personally, to learn to detach. And somewhere along the way, deep in the quiet hours, when no one was watching, you began to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe feeling this much was a flaw you needed to fix. But what if the name they gave it was always wrong? What if the exhaustion you feel after a crowded place, the weight you carry after difficult conversations, the invisible grief that arrives without explanation, what if none of that was a weakness? What if it was evidence of something ancient, something agreed upon, something you chose before you ever took your first breath on this earth? In many esoteric and spiritual traditions, there exists a teaching that the soul does not arrive into a human life by accident. According to these beliefs, before incarnation, a soul stands in full awareness of its nature, its gifts, and its purpose, and it makes agreements. Some souls in these traditions are said to have agreed to carry the gift of what many call empathic perception, not as a curse handed to them without consent, but as a contract signed in full clarity, in full love, before the veil of forgetting descended. You did not stumble into this sensitivity by accident. According to these spiritual interpretations, you agreed to it. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion, beneath the years of wondering why you feel so much more than everyone around you, a quiet part of you has always known this to be true. Imagine for a moment an instrument designed to receive sound. Not a broken receiver, not a faulty device, but a supremely sensitive one. One that can detect frequencies others cannot even register. Now imagine that instrument placed in the center of a stadium during the loudest concert in human history, with no protective casing, no filter, no boundary between its delicate interior and the overwhelming volume of everything around it. The instrument does not malfunction because it is broken. It overloads because it was never protected. Its sensitivity, which is its greatest gift, becomes the very source of its undoing when it has no way to regulate what it receives. This is what has happened to you. Your empathic field, according to many spiritual cosmologies, is not a glitch in your design. It is the design itself. But without the understanding of how to hold it, how to use it, how to honor its edges and its purpose, it becomes indistinguishable from suffering. The contract you made before this life, in the language of these traditions, was not a contract of absorption. It was a contract of translation. You did not agree to carry the pain of others inside your own body until it broke you down. You agreed to perceive it, to hold space for it, and then to return to your own center. The absorption, the merging, the complete loss of the boundary between your feeling and someone else's feeling, that was never part of the original design. That was what happened when you arrived here and no one explained what you were. And from that moment, the merging began. Years passed. You became the person others came to when they needed to be heard. The friend who stayed on the phone for hours. The family member who absorbed the emotional weight of every conflict. The partner who felt their person's pain more acutely than their own. You gave and gave and gave, not because you were weak, but because feeling others was as natural to you as breathing. And the world around you learned very quickly that you were a safe place to pour things into. But no one ever asked what you needed to pour out. You are not becoming more fragile. You are becoming more aware. And awareness without understanding can feel identical to falling apart. The Pleiades star cluster has held symbolic significance across cultures spanning thousands of years. In many indigenous spiritual cosmologies, these stars have been associated with guidance, memory, and the preservation of ancient wisdom. In certain modern spiritual movements, the symbolic energy of the Pleiades is described as carrying frequencies of deep compassion, heightened perception, and empathic consciousness on Earth. Whether understood as mythology, as metaphor, or as something more personal, the symbolism points to something worth sitting with. The qualities this cosmic symbol carries: boundless feeling, sensitivity to invisible forces, the ability to sense what others cannot name. These are the same qualities that have defined your experience your entire life. This is what you were designed to do, not to carry, to witness, not to absorb, to translate. And the translation begins not when you give more, but when you finally learn to receive differently. There is a teaching that many spiritual traditions describe in different languages, but with the same essential instruction. Before you enter a space, before you answer the call, before you sit with someone who needs you, return to yourself first. Not because the world's pain does not matter, but because a vessel that is empty cannot carry anything. A lighthouse whose flame has gone out cannot guide anyone home. The return to self is not selfishness. In the language of this symbolic cosmology, it is sacred maintenance. It is honoring the instrument so the instrument can function as it was designed. The shift that is possible for you right now is not about feeling less. It is not about building walls or becoming cold. It is about learning the difference between your field and another's, between your emotion and the one that floated in from across the room, between the grief that belongs to your own unprocessed experience and the grief you have been carrying on behalf of people who never asked you to. When you begin to sense that difference, something remarkable happens. The exhaustion begins to lift. Not all at once, but gradually. The weight that has lived in your shoulders, in the heaviness behind your eyes, begins to release. Because you are no longer asking your body to do what it was never designed to do indefinitely. You are allowing what passes through to pass through, rather than holding it inside like a sealed container. Your sensitivity is not the problem. The absence of a framework for it has been the problem. The world you were born into did not hand you a map for what you are. No one sat you down and said, "Here is what you can feel. Here is how to know whose feeling it is. Here is how to honor your gift without being destroyed by it." You were handed the instrument with no instruction, and you did the only thing you could. You played it until your hands bled. But that chapter is completing itself now. Something in you is remembering. You can feel it in the fact that you are here, in this moment, recognizing the words before they finish forming. That recognition is not a coincidence. In the symbolic language of spiritual cosmologies that speak of Pleiadian consciousness, of light codes, of pre-birth agreements, and the slow remembering of the soul's original design, this moment is itself described as a point of reawakening. Not because a force outside you is switching something on, but because you have arrived at the place inside yourself where the truth was always waiting. The truth that you are not too much, that your feeling is not a flaw, that the contract you made before you came here was made in wisdom, in love, and in the full knowledge of your capacity to fulfill it with grace. The question is no longer whether you have this gift. You have always known that you do. The question now is whether you are willing to stop using it against yourself. Whether you are willing to lay down the version of empathy that has been costing you everything and pick up the version that was always meant for you, the one that feels deeply and remains whole, the one that loves without dissolving, the one that holds space for all of it, for the grief and the beauty and the confusion and the light, without losing the thread back to its own center. That version of you is not far away. It is not a destination requiring years of work before you are worthy of arriving. It is one breath away. It is the moment you place your hand on your chest and say, for the first time without guilt, I am allowed to feel what I feel. I am allowed to know whose pain is mine and whose is not. I am allowed to love the world without disappearing into it. You agreed to this contract before you were born, and woven into that agreement, according to these traditions, was also the capacity to fulfill it without being destroyed by it. That capacity is here. It has always been here. Underneath the exhaustion, underneath the years of giving without receiving, underneath the accumulated weight of every emotion you absorbed that was never yours to keep, in the stillness beneath all of that, there is a frequency, quiet, steady, unchanged by everything that has passed through you. That frequency is you. It has been waiting, with infinite patience and unconditional love, for you to finally come home to it.